Liberals and leftists then did not trust the CIA, while now they see it as a friendly organization that can oppose Trump, especially as the left has accepted imperialism. Why would President Trump or anyone choose not to trust the secret services and their intentions? Perhaps that one believes that the CIA does not want peace but war. Trump has been accused of hurting the feelings of every minority and of spies. Can anyone imagine a hippie at Woodstock saying, "I'm going to be furious if in the future there is a president who does anything to insult the CIA"? In the 60s, if on one side there were the imperialist warmongers desperately wanting to engage in a war and who controlled the media and politicians, and on the other side the president was against the war, wouldn't liberals be immediately suspicious of the media and politicians instead of believing every accusation they make against the president, when the accusers are so ridiculous that they accuse him of being simultaneously a racist, nationalist, and a traitor, like accusing someone of having sex non-stop and being a virgin? And wouldn't they be suspicious knowing that only imperialists and leftists see Russia as an enemy, as an obstacle to their geopolitical military empire or one-world multicultural empire? Wouldn't they be suspicious knowing that leftists and imperialist neoconservatives together accuse Trump? After all, the left did not support Trump even on the issue of not engaging in war. In the past, the left was against imperialist war, against the secret services, and against making an enemy out of Russia to the point that it would lead to dangerous confrontation. Now, especially since the fall of communism in 1990, the left supports the opposite on all these issues. The most important American newspapers are on the left, but claim to also present opinions of conservatives, but only the neoconservative warmongers, a very small minority among the people who are conservative, never someone from the great majority of conservatives who oppose illegal immigration. Conservative people are generally against American wars until the leftist media propagandize in favor of war, propagandize the neoconservative dogma of constant war, with patriotic brainwash like support our troops instead of don't risk our troops' lives. The leftist newspapers that promote mass immigration and multiculturalism are also the ones that for decades have promoted the views of the leading neoconservatives in journalism, who support every war and urge for even more imperialist wars. The fact that these neoconservatives promote all the wars that result in American soldiers dying, trillions of dollars of debt, and making the United States despised in the Muslim world, leading to more terrorism, and the fact that they do this for what they consider to be the benefit of Israel, coupled with American hegemony, is not considered by the neoconservatives and the leftist media and the protesters to be treason. But being on good terms with Russia instead of risking war with a nuclear superpower is considered treason by these people. The disregard for democracy is common in both the left and the neoconservatives. Consider the legalistically camouflaged attempt at a coup d'etat. The media, Democrats, neoconservatives, secret services, and the deep state conducting brainwash, not for the usual political gain in order to get more votes, but in order to overthrow the elected government and cancel democracy. Imagine if the media did not focus on Trump, offensive, racist, impeach, treason, but instead on immigrant crime and war debt. How different people's perceptions of their country's situation would be. Is it possible to believe that these people truly care about the accusation of Trump's illegal cooperation with Russia? Leftists did not see Russia as an enemy when it really was an enemy under communism. They simply dislike Russia now because it is not part of the multicultural scheming. Why are leftists who used to protest against imperialist wars not saying that at least on this one issue they support Trump's decision to avoid a war and instead remove American soldiers from Syria? Because, as one writer claims a 60s leftist had told him, the issue leftists are protesting about is never the issue. The issue is to make the people feel anger and oppose the government when they do not like its policy, or oppose social norms and conquer power. War or Syria was never the issue. These leftist articles present all the condemnation against Trump, but do not have anything good to say about Trump's decision except one single line. This article presents a video with the people who condemn Trump without one word in his support, even though it is from a leftist site that pretends to be against American involvement in wars. If there is any doubt about the fact that the neoconservative establishment's fury over Trump stopping their imperialist policy of endless wars and their aggressive policy against Russia is connected to the calls for impeachment, calls made by their leftist puppets. Neoconservatives and leftists talk about collusion. Suffice it to say that the neoconservative accusations against Trump through the leftist media are the same as the neoconservative accusations against President Reagan when he tried to come to friendly terms with the Soviet Union and avoid the dangers of confrontation. Treason. Shame. Trump gave the impression of trusting Russian President Putin more than his advisors and the CIA. Reagan trusted Gorbachev more than his neoconservative advisors. Reagan placed neoconservatives in advisory positions and seats of power, but when he saw the time was right to limit the Cold War and come to an agreement with the Soviet Union, he did it, despite the fierce opposition from the neoconservatives. Trump placed imperialist neoconservatives in high positions too, because of their knowledge, abilities, and contacts with politicians and media that could limit opposition to him. Then he did what he had promised to the people: remove the army from Syria and thus face the fury of the neoconservatives. Trump used the neoconservatives like useful idiots and then discarded them. If Trump was not against war and mass immigration, would the establishment try to impeach him? They want to cancel democracy over their desire for war and mass immigration. The neoconservatives, fearful that Trump would stop their imperialist wars, supported Hillary Clinton for president. And the leftist media started praising the neoconservatives. Both sides also agreed on condemning those few Republicans who wanted more freedom and less spying from the government on citizens. When the chief neoconservative news outlet collapsed, neoconservatives restarted it partly with money from a leftist organization. Leftists, while recognizing that the neoconservatives are worse than Trump, with the catastrophes they created, still continue to agree with them that Trump supporters' idea of wanting their country to continue to exist and have a border shows self-interest and self-loathing, and as leftists can still find nice adjectives to use for the neoconservatives, such as reasonable and warm, when they would never consider using one nice word for Trump. Many leading neoconservatives started out as Trotskyists, communists against Stalin, or socialists against communism, as they themselves admit in their articles. However, in the 1960s, they broke off with the left when the left went too far, and because they supported the Vietnam War, being to a large degree Jewish, supported Israel, while the left took the side of the Palestinians, and went on to support an American imperialistic foreign policy. The connection between the neoconservatives and the left became more obvious in the 2016 United States presidential election, when the neoconservatives that largely controlled the Republican establishment disagreed so much with their party's candidate, Trump, who wanted to stop wars and stop massive illegal immigration, that they encouraged Republicans to vote for the Democratic candidate, Hillary Clinton, seen here speaking in one of the organizations that promote neoconservative imperialist foreign policies. As conservatism means conserving society as it is, neoconservatives are not true conservatives because the founder of their movement advocated total transformation and radical reformation of society and the complete change of the character of human beings, something described as a benevolent dictatorship of a self-appointed elite. He proposed using two different modes of speech, one to explain the true reason for doing something, to be used by the insiders, and the other to trick the people so they will support it. In line with Trotsky's permanent revolution, neoconservatives support their equivalent, permanent wars, to impose their benevolent global hegemony. Though predominantly in the Republican Party, neoconservatives influence foreign policy under Democratic presidencies too, from the time of Brzezinski in the 1970s, and when in the Republican Party, they covertly support the acceptance of mass immigration and multiculturalism, as the left desires. Consider the Charlottesville affair. Trump was fair and moderate in condemning both sides at a violent clash, and even said there are good people on both sides, meaning there were peaceful anti-racists among the violent neo-communists and peaceful conservatives protesting against the removal of old statues among the violent neo-Nazis. But neoconservatives and the Republican establishment attacked Trump, demanding that he condemn only the far-right violence, not the far-left violence, although, both in that instance, it was leftists who went to the far-right demonstration in order to intentionally start violence. And generally, leftists are nearly 100% of those who start the violence, of those who counter-protest violently, and those who use violence to stop meetings and speeches. Essentially, these so-called conservatives did not want violent communists to be condemned, sharing the same sentiments with the leftist media. The real story here was not what Trump said, but that the media refused to condemn the violent left. When violent communists attacked people from the far right, the leading Republicans justified the communists by saying the other side was composed of racists and they got what they deserved. But then the communists went on to attack others who were clearly not far-right racists. But let us assume that they were racists. Is not a violent attack worse than a racist belief? Attacks hurt people, beliefs hurt feelings. And the attackers were not mere anti-racists, but communists, violent communists. Communism has killed 80 million people, far, far more than racism has. And it is the attackers who have the fascist mentality, making them worse than any racist who is non-violent. Thus, the Republican establishment believes violent communist fascism is good, peaceful racism is unforgivable. They could have condemned the racists for their beliefs and the communists more for their actions. Choosing not to do this shows that they consider even these violent communists as allies in their internationalism globalization schemes. Just as patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel, the last fake excuse to justify his crimes, likewise, anti-racism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. The neoconservatives and leftists claim fake patriots cannot be forgiven, but fake anti-racists should always be forgiven. Actually, both are fascists. Their fake beliefs are only an excuse for their crimes. The Nazi perspective is hate others and other countries. The leftist and neoconservative perspective is hate yourselves. Be patriotic, but only when it comes to supporting the wars which we engineer. Other than that, accept mass, non-stop illegal immigration. Wish to be substituted. If you wish to exist as a separate nation with a separate culture and identity, you are racist. Hate your country.